Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the West Tisbury Library. My name is Olivia. I work here at the library, and we are so excited to have Dr. Enid Haller here today to talk about Lyme diagnosis and treatment. Enid is the founder of the Lyme support group of Martha's Vineyard and the Lyme Center of Martha's Vineyard. And tonight she is accompanied by Dr. Ronnie DeLuz and others with Lyme stories to share. Enid will teach us about a new treatment for Lyme disease called hyperthermia, and will give us insight on the Clinic St. George, a Lyme disease center in Germany. So thank you all so much for coming this evening, and welcome Dr. Enid Haller.
Thank you, Olivia. Okay, so this little book I'm holding, it says Lyme book number 10. So, since I founded the Lyme support group 8 years ago, Helly, is that how long we've been doing it? 8 years ago, long time. I have been documenting all the phone calls I've gotten. You know, it's upsetting, but there's a lot of people that are sick here, and it's pretty rampant all over the world, not just here, but in every state. So with just the Lyme support group, I started getting lots of phone calls because each book has about 500 names in it and numbers, and then I have 10 of these books, and then I've got the emails that I'm not even counting yet. I haven't even gotten back to count those. So we have a pretty big problem with Lyme disease, chronic Lyme, and it's not being recognized by our medical community yet. And there's a lot of reasons why that's not happening, and I'll go into that a little bit, but first I'd like to just start out to tell you that the reason I started studying Lyme and basically making it my life is because my husband, my daughter, and myself all got sick with Lyme when we moved here from New York about 10 years ago. So, but we didn't know that we were infected because we didn't know about ticks. Nobody said anything about Lyme. We just didn't know. There was like no information about it. And so we were bitten many times at this rental in the woods that first year. And I remember the ticks crawling in our beds at night and us taking them off of the dogs and the cats, and we thought nothing of it. And then all of a sudden, about 2 years, my daughter, started malfunctioning, and she had to drop out. She was almost 11, and she had to drop out of grade school because she was so sick that she was pretty much bedridden, and her personality was really leaving us, So I think she was very much close to death. It was a pretty bad situation. She couldn't walk anymore. So we had her to all the specialists, and we took her to Mass General, we took her to Children's Hospital in Boston, everywhere, and nobody could tell us what was wrong with her. And it wasn't until a friend of mine that summer, and that was, what year was that? That was like, we're talking about 8 years ago. So that summer was at the Martha's Vineyard Film Festival. They showed the movie Under Our Skin. And if it wasn't for that documentary that someone handed me, that they had one of the little free giveaways of Under Our Skin, that I put that movie in, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was like, those are her symptoms. She's got Lyme. And everybody swore to me that she didn't have Lyme disease. And she came back negative many times on the test. So we lost a lot of time, 6 to 8 months of her not feeling well and the Lyme getting worse and turning more into chronic, late stage Lyme. And so at least with watching that movie, I had a map now, as to what to do. Because all the Lyme doctors who were on that movie, I saw what the other Lyme patients were doing, and like that was how I learned. And there was nothing. The only book that was out at the time was this, Cure Unknown, Pamela Weintraub. This the one Lyme book, and it had just come out, and it's still very good. She's updated it, and same thing happened to her. She was a science writer, lived in New York City, and then got sick when she moved to the country, and so her family got ill as well. So I set out learning about Lyme. That was, you know, basically what I did. My friend Debbie Heverly, who was a doctor, an MD in Texas, had Lyme herself, and now everything started to make sense because I was like, wait a minute, that's the disease my friend was telling you about, you know, a few years back. So I called her, and she had not been able to work for 10 years, and she walked me through what I'm supposed to do too. So I actually was able to jump a lot of steps, you know, that most people do not figure out. And it's really hard to figure this out on your own. The information, there's bad information, there's good information, it's mixed on the internet. So if you're struggling trying to figure out if you've got Lyme or not, and if it's chronic or, you know, short term or long term or whatever, it's almost virtually impossible for you to do this on your own. Plus you don't feel well enough to do it, usually. Nowadays it's much better, but back then, no way. You know, 8 years ago, there was nothing. So anyway, the point being is that with Dean, there was only one pediatrician in the entire country. His name was Dr. Charles Ray Jones in New Haven, Connecticut, and we got her there as soon as possible, and we got in fast. And he would spend 3 hours with us. Most of these Lyme literate doctors will spend that much time with you the first time you come in. They're called LLMDs, Lyme literate medical doctors. Those are the only doctors you should trust with this disease in its late stage, okay? Because our regular doctors just don't know about this disease yet. They're not teaching it in the medical schools. They really don't know about it at all. And the blood tests are poor. So you really have to diagnose with a symptom checklist, you know, not by the blood. And do not trust the blood test. It's very bad. The only better test that I know of that a lot of people use, and the Lyme Center, the Dean Lyme Center in Boston now, uses the IGeneX test, IGENEX, Palo Alto, California. You get your primary care doctor to draw this blood for you, if you can, on the island. They will draw it at the blood lab now, again, thank God. But you just have to get a doctor to sign off, so you ask your primary care, and they're getting better at the hospital, I have to say. A few of them are signing off on this now. And you know, you send your blood out. You have to send it either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, not Thursday, Friday. And then once the results come back in 2 weeks, you want to get a copy of these tests, because a lot of our regular doctors don't know how to read them correctly. I did order this test for my daughter and took her to the pediatrician at the hospital when I first started out examining, you know, trying to figure this Lyme thing out. And the doctor there told me, oh, the test is negative. But it was very positive. So she had never seen the IGeneX, but she was reading it wrong and told me wrong information about it. So you really can only get that test read by a LLMD. And the closest one we have here is a woman by the name of Susan Newberg. And she's right outside of Providence. She has the Lyme Center of New England. And if you Google that, her information will come up. And then, you know, you'll be able to get a proper diagnosis of your IGeneX test. And if you can't get somebody to sign off on that IGeneX test here, you will have to take that to Susan Newberg, and she will sign off on it. Okay?
Could you repeat the name?
Yeah.
Newberg?
I'm going to spell it for you. It's N-E-U, B as in boy, E-R. Newberg. Lyme Center of New England. You just Google her information will come right up. She's got about a 2-month waiting list now, but that's short for Lyme doctors. I hate to tell you that. But we're lucky to have her just an hour away, which is great. And she's not that expensive. She's made it pretty affordable for people, where some of the Lyme doctors are very expensive because they're working outside the system. So the only place that's going to take your insurance is the Dean Lyme Center. And that has a year waiting list now. That's in Charlestown, Mass. Okay. So anyway, let's see, I'll try to get back on track here.
Germany.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Germany quite yet. But thank you, Ellie. I have Lyme brain, you know. Yeah, this is good to know. A couple nights ago, I had a great guy here, Dr. Bill Rawls. This is what his book looks like. It's called Unlocking Lyme. And he spoke at the Lyme Support Group. We do have a Lyme Support Group here every first Wednesday of every month at 6:30 at House. So you might want to make a note of that if you. And it's a very informative group. We've all kind of become doctors ourselves about this disease because we've had to, you know, because we've been working outside the system for so long. And so basically the education that a Lyme patient gets is more education than a regular doctor ever can get, than our regular, you know, doctors that the medical doctors that we go to, the primary care physicians. It's not their fault. They are just not taught this in medical school, and there's a huge fight with the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, fighting if this is a real illness or not. Is this a chronic disease, or is this made up, or are people making this up in their heads? So you usually end up going through an array of many doctors and many tests before you try to get a positive Lyme test. They're still relying on these blood tests that don't work, unfortunately. So it's hard to get a proper diagnosis in the system. If you're lucky enough to come back positive on that blood test, then you'll be sent off another whole horrible place, and you'll start to see the rheumatologists or the infectious disease doctors, and they don't know how to treat it. And they will say there's no such thing as chronic Lyme or late stage Lyme. It must be in your head. You must be making these symptoms up. And then you get sent to the psychiatrist, and you get medicated for Lyme disease. So that is the route that will happen to you if you go the normal route, you know, of our medical system now, until it gets revamped. And I don't know when that's going to be, you know. We're hoping we think that there's a new center in Boston called the Dean, D-E-A-N, Lyme Center. And a wonderful woman by the name of Brandi Dean founded this center with her husband. She started out, she was so sick herself, she started out with a Lyme blog. And that's what's been going on all across America, are Lyme blogs. All the Lyme people, patients, have been reaching out to each other. And it's actually quite incredible. If you go on Facebook and you join the Lyme groups, everybody's helping everyone and sharing information. It's become incredibly strong. And now, so many people are not following the IDSA guidelines anymore for Lyme, the Infectious Disease Society of America, but they're following the ILADS guidelines. And the ILADS is the International Lyme Disease and Associated Society, I think that is. ILADS is I-L-A-D-S, if you go on their website, and those are all the Lyme literate doctors. And now, a lot of people are following those guidelines, not the CDC guidelines for Lyme and not the IDSA guidelines any longer. So it's starting to turn the other direction. Thank God. Because now we've got record numbers, you know, people that are sick and nobody knows what to do with them. This I recommend because this doctor was sick with Lyme. He's an MD. He's a great guy. He was here. And he just met with Dr. Richard Horowitz, who is the other very knowledgeable Lyme doctor. And you want to get his book too, if you want to educate yourself a little bit more about Lyme and read the right books. This is his most recent book. This is Dr. Richard Horowitz, very important. How Can I Get Better? You should probably get this book if you want to educate yourself about chronic Lyme. He's my doctor, Dr. Richard Horowitz, and we started seeing him 8 years ago. So I introduced these two doctors, and the reason why I did that They drove down, Dr. Rawls, he is from North Carolina, and they drove up here to meet everybody up here. So I was able to introduce them to the Dean Lyme Center, and he spoke there, because I know that I'm on the board there at the Dean Lyme Center in Boston. And so they needed to hook up, because down south there's no support, like zero. Like in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, there's a lot of Lyme down there, and nobody will acknowledge it. Like hardly any support groups. They're in very bad shape, and the Lyme numbers are off the charts. Like it's really bad in his state. Another doctor from North Carolina, from Duke University, his name is Dr. Neal Specter. He has a great book, Gone in a Heartbeat. He's an oncologist that teaches at Duke, and he got Lyme disease, chronic Lyme, and his heart was completely destroyed by the chronic Lyme disease, and he almost died. He got a heart transplant just in time, never got a positive Lyme diagnosis until after they took the heart out, they found Borrelia in the heart. So he completely couldn't believe this, and Borrelia is the bacteria, the Lyme bacteria. It's called Borrelia, or Dorfrite, and then he became a Lyme advocate after that. So he wrote a book, and now he just travels pretty much all over the world, you know, to try to educate people about chronic Lyme. So chronic Lyme not only gets in your heart, it gets in your brain. And the neurological Lyme is the hardest Lyme to treat and the most difficult Lyme to get rid of once you have it. There is a methodology that some of the Lyme doctors use, or a theory that they believe in, that they feel that one of the only ways to get to neurological Lyme and to break the blood-brain barrier is to get one of these in your arm. And it's called a PICC line. So I give myself IV antibiotics every day. And I've been doing this, this is my second year. So I did it for 11 months last year, and then I did it for, I've been on it for 4 months now, 5 months. So I'm going to try to get through, they have to take it out after 11 months because they're too big, it starts to deteriorate. But there is a young girl who's not here tonight, but she's quite brilliant, and her name is Phoenix. She lives here in the island. And she has studied Lyme so well that it was really Phoenix that taught me about this PICC line, that she did it herself, and her father and mother both have Lyme as well. And so she really had to be the scientist and figure this out. And she did, you know. So she basically was the one who first told me about this, even before the Lyme doctors knew about it. So years ago, you know, she had a PICC line. She said it's the long-term, you know, to get through the blood-brain barrier, you've got to repair the neurological damage, and this IV antibiotics goes through your bloodstream and starts to, you know, repair, you know, the damage, and or at least start to stop the damage from happening any further. But I have to tell you that when I did get this in my arm last year, I did change. And I became clear again. I had lost my ability to read a book. That came back. I had lost my ability to do a lot. You know, I was pretty much in bad shape at that point. And it's because I was reinfected. When you get reinfected, you start from square one again with chronic Lyme. It's a problem. So if you get treated, let's say, which I did, from Dr. Horowitz, and we all felt pretty good after we were treated, starting 8 years ago. After 2 years of treatment, and he told us that too, you know, he said 2 years. It's going to take 2 years. And it did. It took 2 years for my husband, my daughter, and for myself to feel better and start to get up and moving and be normal again. But then I was reinfected 3 more times. And 2 of those times I was bitten in the head, which is not a good place to be bitten with a tick because it's just so close to your brain. I think that people that I know that have been bitten on the head, you know, seem to have more neurological symptoms. And I certainly did. Mine got really bad after that. So when I did get the IV in my arm last year, everything changed. You know, everything started to come back. all my abilities started to come back again. So basically, within the Lyme world, this sounds weird to say, but we are guinea pigs. Because the Lyme patients just have to keep trying things until they work, because we all have different systems, don't we? We all have different immune systems, and our immune systems are disabled with Lyme, just like cancer. So they're making a real correlation between cancer and Lyme now, that Lyme is more like cancer, and they're really trying to adapt the treatment and go more with stem cells, which they do for cancer. That's a big thing with the marrow bone, when they do the, I'm talking about when the bone replacement, what is that?
Yeah.
Thank you. That is really stem cells that they're giving you, and so a lot of people in this country and out of the country are doing stem cells for Lyme now. That seems to be working very well, but you have to make sure you go to a good place. And you'll have somebody tonight talk about bee therapy for Lyme, which is really good. And there's the St. George Clinic, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. Let me make sure I covered everything here before I move there. Well, this I have to say, because this is the most remarkable thing, but I don't think I would have had the initiative to start studying Lyme if it wasn't for the help of Beth Kramer at this library. And it was the old library at the time. It was a tiny little place, but wow, Beth just ran it so well, and she still does. And so it was after we all got sick with Lyme, and she heard this, and I was coming to the library to see, hey, do you have any Lyme books? And she had that book, by Pamela Weintraub, the only one she had. So I took it out and I started. It was a great book. And then I was like, oh my God, what is this? So I'm watching like Under Our Skin, and I'm reading this book. I'm like, this is, I'm in like a science fiction movie. This can't be real, right? This Lyme world, and it sounds made up. It sounds like it's fake. And so Beth then turned me when I was returning the book, and she said, can you help us here? She knew I was a psychotherapist. And she said, can you help us? And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, there's 10 people a day that come in here with Lyme disease. I was like, what? And she said, no. She said, this is a problem we have, and no, they have nowhere to go. Like they're turned away, when they go to the hospital, because they say that there's no such thing as chronic Lyme, and they have no support, and they're really bad off. And so she said, do you think you can do something just to start getting information out there or something about this? And I was like, well, I could. And I came up with the idea to just run Under Our Skin every month here for a year. It was amazing. I mean, to talk about emotional, these people that were coming in, a lot of them couldn't walk, a lot of them couldn't think, their brains had really gone. So it was hard to see this, but I was so happy that they had gotten the energy, to get up and come, to this group. So it grew and grew and grew, so up till it was a lot of people, 50 people, I think, by the end. And and they were in and out too. Some would come back and keep seeing the movie again. And then it was Phoenix that came up with the idea. She said, we need to have a support group, and so she asked me if we could start doing that. And that turned out to be the best thing ever, because once a month, more people came out, they get more educated, we find out more as a group where to go, where are the Lyme litter doctors, who's better than, maybe this person's not so great, maybe this other person's better, let's figure out how expensive he is. And that's what, and Helly was there most of the time, and Ronnie too. Ronnie's joined the group a while, 5 years ago or something too. And, it's really been a wonderful thing, I have to tell you. And I don't know if any of this information would have gotten to these people if we hadn't done this. I just don't know. I mean, I think it might have, but it certainly made the process move a little bit faster, right, and for them to get the proper help. So anyway, so after I got the PIC line, just to tell you about myself, more about my own treatment, and it's different for everybody. Some people are allergic to antibiotics. They can't do it. And that's where Dr. Rawls comes in, and you know, the Buhner protocol is another one, and I think that Dr. Buhner was just here. Is that right? Or what's the other one? Cowden. There's two. There's Dr. Cowden and Dr. Bruder wrote Healing Lyme. These two doctors, you know, have come up with very good programs for people who can't take antibiotics. So, you know, and Dr. Rawls has joined that group. So he has a protocol that you can actually call him and order, and you know, he's doing very well now, and now he's becoming pretty famous. But he had Lyme for 20 years, and you know, his book is quite moving to read it, and that's a good thing to reach out to if you're allergic, especially, you know, and you don't want to go the antibiotic route. The most important thing that Ronnie will talk about is she has a retreat here in the island, and there's 3 or 4 phases in getting better from this disease. So the first phase is that you have to figure out, first of all, what fits you. You know, you might have to try certain different medications. You might have to find a Lyme literate doctor first, and they have to try different things, and then you kind of figure out what works for you, and then you have to figure out how to kill the spirochetes. Now, the spirochetes are in your system 3 different ways. And if you have late-stage Lyme, you've got spirochetes in your system in a cyst form, which is like, you can't penetrate that very well. It's hard to break that. So the reason why I went to Germany to do hyperthermia is their theory, and they've been doing this for about 25 years there, and it's successful. They raise your body temperature to 107. You're actually put under anesthetic for this. And so you're actually making the spirochetes come out of the cyst form, and then they give you, you know, antibiotics in your intravenous to kill the spirochetes when they're coming out of the cyst form. And then they're also, you know, damaging them in the cyst form, because the high temperature just makes them like fall apart. You know, they don't like high heat. It does kill them, apparently. And I have to say that after the 2 treatments of the hypothermia, and then of course the repair, which is very important, which is the detox, you have to detox all this stuff out of you after you kill them. Because if they stay inside you, that's not good either. That makes you sick, and they give off a toxin. So you not only have to do a kill process, you have to detox. And Ronnie knows this. She's figured this out a long time ago. So it's kind of a 3 to 4 prong thing, and then you know, treatment plan, and then maintenance after that. So that means you've got to keep your immune system strong with probiotics and supplements, and keep on top of it. It's a process. You know, there's no doubt about it. It's a process getting well from this disease, but they're figuring it out. That's the main thing. I mean, before, when I first started doing this work, they were clueless. I mean, like, no one knew what to do. Now, it's changed. You know, it really has. And people like Ronnie, who's a naturopath, the naturopaths are ahead of us, you know, as far as, you know, they've figured out so much more than our regular doctors. Our regular doctors don't have time to look at this kind of thing. And naturopaths were always on the right track, figuring this out all along here. So she came up with this protocol that's very much like the St. George class, and she's done that by herself. And I compared the 2 things on purpose. I wanted to go over there to see, you know, if it was similar to Ronnie's, and it is. And we've got her right here on the island. Now we have to figure out how to make it affordable for everybody. So we're working on that. That's our next thing. And we have some people that, you know, might be interested in helping us get a Lyme center started here. We're looking at the first place on Monday. And, you know, so we're hoping that, that we can get something here with a few Lyme literate doctors who know what they're doing, you know, and can help our doctors here learn about chronic Lyme. Because, you know, there's just no education for them. And there's no, you know, there's a lot of other things that are affected. Unfortunately, you know, people probably are aware that our addiction problem here is high. And a lot of us who study Lyme believe it might be connected to self-medicating the chronic pain that comes from chronic Lyme disease, undiagnosed chronic Lyme. So not only can you walk around with this disease for 30 years and not know it or even treat it, you can be misdiagnosed with MS or fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. These could be late stage. These might be related to Lyme disease. We're sensing that there's a problem there, that because the blood tests are not great for those other diseases either, and because no one's looking for chronic Lyme, no doctor is trained for chronic Lyme, it's going to be missed, and the blood tests are not good, so you're really going to miss it. So you're going to treat for another disease, and then you might have gotten better. The classic, there's lots of celebrities coming out now who have chronic Lyme that have been treated for other diseases. And one in particular is Chris Christopherson. And he had, I think it was Parkinson's, for, what was it?
Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's. For how many years? 20 years or something?
It's a really sudden onset.
And it was a sudden onset, and that's when it's an indication. If it comes on fast, that's kind of a weird thing, for one of those diseases to come in quickly. But I guess he came forward, somehow they looked into Lyme disease with him finally, and they treated him with a Lyme protocol, and he's back. And his brain was like gone. And apparently he's functioning pretty well now and recovering, and so they were able to turn it around. So how many other people, are walking around? He's Chris Christopherson, so he got some special treatment because he's a celebrity probably, but how many of us regular people are walking around never find out, that we've got this disease. So it's a problem. The St. George Clinic, after I had the treatment, I felt better immediately. You have a Herxheimer reaction after, which is normal when you do a kill cycle with Lyme. It's called Herx in short, as we call it in the Lyme world. And when you Herx, you feel pretty bad because the Herx is making you, it's the toxins that come off of the dead spirochetes that are making your system sick, so you've got to get these out of your system, and it's making you ill. So they're very good at doing that at the St. George Clinic, of getting this stuff out of you fast, in 5 different ways of detox. After that, you feel great. I mean, I felt normal for the first time in a long time, probably 20 years, 30 years. I mean, I don't know how long I've had Lyme. I think it's going back. But I'm not on antibiotics anymore. I don't have to put it in my arm anymore. And I usually crash, as you know. Yes. When I stop antibiotics, I crash because your immune system is shot, and it can't be supported. When you do stop the antibiotics, either oral or IV, you usually have a pretty bad time with it, like I did last year. But I haven't crashed yet, and it's been a week, and that's pretty good for me. So I had 2 treatments while I was there, and I feel normal. I have a little bit of jet lag today, but I just got back a couple days ago. But I think there's something to this treatment. I think that if we could try to figure out a way to make it affordable or get one of these machines here, that's what we're talking about tonight. And if we could try to get insurance to cover it, I don't know, we could try. The Dean Lyme Center, I just got to say something about that. They're changing the scope of Lyme, and the reason why is because they're owned by, they're Spalding Rehab, which is that beautiful hospital in Charlestown, Mass. A year and a half ago, they opened up. I was patient number 1. I waited for them to open. So I knew Brandi too. But I got in there, and it's before the grand opening. They opened up 6 months before they actually announced it because they just wanted to get things ramped up and going before they made the official grand opening. So this was in June, and I got in there, and there were just, Dr. Nev there is, I have to say, is fantastic. Kelly was one of her first patients too. And, she is so passionate. Talk about passion. She is so passionate about this because she had Lyme herself. So when the doctor has Lyme themselves, that's when they're really good at Lyme because they know what it feels like. And we have a saying in the Lyme where we say, you don't get it until you get it. So if you get Lyme, you know what we're talking about because you have a camaraderie with other Lyme people. You know exactly how they feel. But Dr. Neb is from Harvard University. It's a Harvard Medical University training hospital. They're owned by partners. The same umbrella that owns Martha's Vineyard Hospital, Cape Cod Hospital, 35 Spaldings, Brigham Women's. This is the umbrella. Partners is the umbrella that owns all these hospitals in our area. And they allowed the Dean Lyme Center to open up. That's pretty remarkable. And they take every insurance from all over the world, from every state. How in the world did that happen? Yeah. So they are building a Lyme Center there. And they've been there for 2.5 years, and they're getting better every day. Okay, so it's worth your while to get on that waiting list, because by the time you get in there, they're really going to have it down, I think. Because the treatment, they've got some blocks to the treatment, but they're working through them. And these doctors are great. I asked Dr. Neb to come speak at the Martha's Vineyard Hospital last summer. She did come. I was so happy. And when she spoke, it was a little bit contentious. It's hard for the doctors to hear certain things. But certain things that really do need to change, I think, not just on the island, but everywhere across America, is we've got to get rid of that blood test, and we've got to get IGeneX in its place, and we've got to let people know that test doesn't work, and we've got to stop doing the 2-pill doxy, because that is really dangerous, and they're still handing it out now. And Dr. Nev asked, please don't do that anymore, but they're still doing that. That was a year ago. She asked them to look at that again. And I know they're doing it because I get phone calls every day. So I know that they're still doing it, and a lot. And every not just the hospital, every clinic is doing that. So the 2-pill doxy is unsafe. Do not do that. Make sure if you get bit by a tick that you go on at least 1 month of doxy or amoxicillin if you're out in the sun. And make sure you take 30 days. And if you have any symptoms after that, you call me and get a Lyme literate doctor, or go to the Lyme Center of New England and go see her. And then she'll tell you if you've got like a chronic situation, or as we get older, the symptoms get worse. Okay? And like I said, I don't blame the doctors. That's what they've been taught. Dr. Horowitz, by the way, who is kind of famous now, he is planning a whole educational series for chronic Lyme, and he's going to start to teach a chronic Lyme class in medical school in the University of Colorado. That'll be the first one in the world. So that means he's starting that pretty soon. I think in the fall. He's planning it now. So that's the first medical school that will be trained. Okay, so I think I'm pretty much done with my stuff. These pictures, I just want to show you, this is my family, including Merlin. And then this was the Lyme Center. I had this for about 7 years. It's now closed as a little place. I closed it last fall because we moved to Holliston, Mass. And my husband's work is there, and he was commuting, so I had to move to Holliston. But we're here in the summer, but we're trying to find a bigger Lyme Center. Anyway, this was just a little baby one that we had for people to come in. It was free, and you could get consultations and just to help you figure out what to do, what the steps were. But it worked for a few years nicely, and we want to get another one open here, but with treatment. We want treatment. This was a great thing we had a few years ago. Helly killed herself helping me with this. Remember, you were dead that day. This was an all-day affair we had. This was great. This was this organization has not merged with another one since then. TBDA, which is Tick-Borne Disease Alliance. I hooked up with them from New York City. This is like I don't know what year this was, 4 or 5 years ago. And we had a wonderful Lyme Day, and we had so many great people come and speak, and it really was a great thing. You know, we had all the famous Lyme doctors there, and it went very well. And Ronnie spoke, and it was very successful. And this was they started. Chris has Lyme disease, and he started to ride his bike here in Martha's Vineyard across America for Lyme. So they started here, and then they went to all the states and followed him, you know, with a bus. That's Brandi Dean, my hero. She started the Dean Lyme Center. She's very sick. But she's doing better now. We went to Germany together, and she'll be back in a few days. So I think that she'll be feeling better soon. These are, I got to tell you, this group of people right here, they're remarkable. There are Lyme warriors that are fighting the laws. And man, these guys, they kill themselves every day, you know. And this Jennifer Heath and Kathleen Dixon and Jerry Seidel, and they're with senators there in Washington, D.C. And they have been, they're called Lyme crime. And the reason why they are fighting so hard is because they believe that something was not quite right with what happened with Lyme disease. I mean, there's a reason why that blood test is not working. And it's something wrapped up with the vaccine. We're not sure what. But these guys are really, have a class action lawsuit suing the CDC now. And they've got a big following, and they've got a lot of money behind them now. So it's finally happening that the truth will come out about what happened with this disease and why this happened. There's the clinic, St. George. And here they are. This is all the people, these are the doctors. This is the best team of doctors I've ever seen in my entire life. Every morning they would come in and do grand rounds together. And the team is remarkable. This is Dr. Dowles, who started the clinic 25 years ago. And then his son is here, who's also a psychotherapist, and 2 daughters work with him, and who are also doctors. And the son has come up with a very good psychological thing for Lyme, because I, being a psychotherapist, have been trying to figure out what's a good therapy for Lyme patients, because very difficult, because the brain is not working very well, you know. So you have to figure out what does work. And I think I'm going to study now with Dr. Dow's son through Skype, and he's going to teach me how to do this EMDR. And we do have it here. There are certain people that are doing it. And if you want to look into it, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is what that stands for. And then, because, you know, you also have PTSD when you have Lyme. And that sounds weird, but it's trauma. I mean, PTSD is not just coming back from the war, but any kind of trauma. And most people that I've met with Lyme, they are traumatized, you know, because they have been through hell, you know, trying to figure out what to do and how to find the money to do it and where to go, and it's a horrible thing. So we feel like, here's the pins from all the patients. So they're from all over the world. So this is Australia. Australia's really bad for Lyme. This is the United States. Look at New England. So when you go there, you put a little pin on there. And I forgot to put my pin on. I'm so mad. I might call my friend there and say, you know, my psychotherapist, right, can you put the pin up there in your Boston, out there in the water? This is just Dr. Rawls and his daughter came 2 nights ago, and great people. My whole shtick was to try to get Horowitz and Rawls to work together. So you basically to merge both worlds. The antibiotic world is Dr. Horowitz more, although he does know how to work with supplements. But these guys really know how to work with Lyme without using antibiotics, you know, using herbs. And so these guys go along. I did call Dr. Horowitz, and he got down there to see him, and they met yesterday, and they're going to try to work together, you know. And so we need to merge these 2 worlds, you know, so that's important. I think that's it. So I'm just going to have one more thing. I just want to go through this and make sure that I covered everything. This is a very important booklet. They're back there. This gives you the Lyme basics. This is from the Lyme support group in Pennsylvania. It's very good. This is back there too. This is all about you know, the Lyme clinic that I just went to in Germany. This is Under Our Skin, which is a movie everybody should watch. I think it's on Netflix. You don't have to buy it. This is the Lyme Times, which is the only Lyme machine or you know, magazine. And you can get this. You can also actually register yourself under My Lyme Data. They're counting people with Lyme disease. And that's really what the Dean Lyme Center is doing too. They're counting for the first time in the history Lyme patients, chronic Lyme patients. So that's going in the master computer of partners for the last 2.5 years. That's huge, that we're counting the people finally. Nobody was really counting them before. So the numbers, I think, are bigger than we thought. My friend Sheila Statlander, I've got to say a word about her. She's a psychologist from Newton. So if you have any trouble with a child or anybody that they try to, what's been happening is, with children, is that they have Lyme and they're being categorized as psychological problems. So they're locked up. They're put into psychiatric wards, small children, and they have Lyme. So Sheila has been a great advocate. She's for these children, and so if you hear anything like this happening, I've sent a lot of
Name again?
Sheila, Dr. Sheila Statlander, Statlender, Newton, Mass. Not only has Sheila helped many children with Lyme stay out of psych wards, she put together this wonderful the Massachusetts Lyme Legislative Task Force with 8 other people here. And they have been responsible for changing the laws in Lyme in Massachusetts. We're very lucky to have them. And they fight tirelessly at the State House, and to get bills introduced. And they've had the bill passed several years ago to make it illegal to take away licenses of Lyme literate doctors in Massachusetts. We were the first to do that because of her. And just last August, she made these bills go through, and it was rough. She made it possible to make and force Blue Cross Blue Shield and any other Massachusetts insurance to cover long-term antibiotics for chronic Lyme. That's huge, because they're not even recognizing it as a disease yet. But she got that bill passed, and there was 2 of them that passed last August. So that means, sometimes if you're trying to get your long-term antibiotics or whatever treatment you're trying to get from your Lyme in Massachusetts, it should be covered by insurance now. And if they try to turn it down, but Sheila, if you email her, she'll tell you how to fight it, and you just have to write 1 letter, and it'll turn around, and and then your coverage will kick in. They're still trying to fight it a little bit, but if you know what to say, they'll reimburse you. Okay, and then I guess that's all. I think I'm done. So I think what the next thing is going to happen is I will have, who wants to talk? Nisi? No, Holly wants to talk first. I said Holly. Holly, you come up, then Nisi. Is that okay? And then you guys can decide. Does that sound all right? Okay, great.
Okay. I'll be brief. So I'm Hallie Neumann. I'm an acupuncturist here on Martha's Vineyard. I was bit in 1993, was fine for about 5 years, and then in 1998 started deteriorating into post-treatment Lyme syndrome, whatever it is, and for about 14 years, down until a neurologist finally said, gee, why don't you do a Lyme test? And I said, oh no, I had Lyme in 93, I took the 3 months or the month of Doxy, I'm fine. And he said, you need to educate yourself. So that began my education. That was in 2012. Finally got diagnosed a year later, came back home here, this was in California, and nobody here knew what to do. Oh, I don't know what this is, I don't know how to read this test. So began a very long journey for self-healing. I developed a severe antibiotic allergy. I actually have Stevens-Johnson syndrome, so if I take the wrong drugs, I can die. So I don't go there. I've done all herbs, all homeopathy, and actually went to acupuncture school because I got Lyme disease, and the only time I ever felt better was when I was receiving acupuncture. So that was my inspiration. So I ended up turning this horrible thing into something really positive. And I think that was my saving grace. So what I've created is a free clinic every Wednesday for PTSD here on Martha's Vineyard. It's in Vineyard Haven at the Legion Hall, so, which is in right across from the the Vineyard Haven School in the American Legion Hall. It's in the Bethel. Everybody's welcome. I started it originally for veterans about 5 years ago, but 3 months ago I decided to focus more on Lyme because, as Ian said, we are all PTSD. And I'm calling it post-traumatic tick syndrome. Because in fact, about 95% of my people who are coming have Lyme. And it's a very simple treatment. It's about 30 to 45 minutes. You lay in a chair, you relax, I put needles in your ears, and then you basically get your nervous system rebooted. You're going to be calm. A lot of people are sleeping better already, less anxiety, less panic attacks. So it's just a very simple thing that I wish y'all would come. It's great. So I've got flyers in the back.
When do you meet? What time?
Sorry? Every Wednesday, 4 to 6. It's about a half-hour treatment, so don't show up at 5:45 or you'll be gypped. Because I get to be out by 6. And I put flyers in the back, so everybody's welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. Nixie, come up and tell us your story. Amazing story.
I actually wrote up the whole thing.
Oh,
so
good.
Here we go.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anise Bermudez. I'm here to talk about app therapy, or bee venom therapy. Now, bee venom therapy was definitely not my first choice. I could tell you about all the doctors that I've been to, all the side effects from all the treatments that I've had. But I'd rather tell you about the one that actually made a difference, that gave me energy and encouraged me to actually continue. I began bee venom therapy last year in May, the American way, which is 10 stings beside the spine 3 times a week. And then this past January, just a few months ago, I went to Mexico to be stung the Mexican way, which is about 60 to 100 stings all over the body, including but not limited to the spine, the head, acupuncture points, joints, organs, wherever the pain is, every day. So I did say acupuncture points, and I just wanted to point out, I found this quote. The American Apitherapy Society says that hitting acupuncture points with potent bee venom is like hitting it with a grenade and can cause small nerve damage. And when I got back from Mexico, I went to my doctor, and she said that my nerves had completely regenerated. So I don't think that's completely correct about the American Apitherapy Society, because I was only being treated for about 4 months pretty aggressively, and my nerves were completely regenerated. And the American Apitherapy Society also says that it takes about 2 to 3 years to eradicate Lyme in all forms and to heal damage that has been done. And it was about 4 or 5 months with me. The American Apitherapy Society also says that you should not sting people with diabetes, people on dialysis, women who are pregnant during ovulation, and to not ever sting babies. And in Mexico, none of these rules follow, because the venom of the bee is a natural antibiotic, anti-inflammatory, antifungal, antiviral, and it also has about 40 different minerals that are just healthy for everyone and healing for everyone. Unlike antibiotics, there aren't any side effects, short-term or long-term. I mean, you could go on and on about all the short-term side effects that antibiotics cause. Long-term, including the disruption of the gut flora, even if you're taking probiotics, it screws up your microbiome. Just in general, with the antibiotic resistance, over the decades, just overprescribing antibiotics causes, at this point, antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So I actually heard on NPR the other day that doctors aren't having their patients finish their antibiotic cycles. They're actually making them shorter, even though a few years ago was you're supposed to take it the whole entire 7 days, whatever it was. I actually had to get stings targeted to regenerate my liver because I had taken so many antibiotics, just to detox it and regenerate it, help it out. Another advantage of the bee venom therapy is that it is available, it's cheap, you don't have to go through insurance. You can buy the bees in boxes just from beekeepers in the area. You can also order them from apiaries all over the country. that sell them specifically for apitherapy. I personally have my own hives to support my habit. I was actually driving in Vermont a couple weeks ago and I didn't have any bees on me, and I saw a sign that said honey for sale. So I just pulled over and left with a jar of honeybees. So like any treatment out there, there are some downsides. Yes, it does hurt. They are bee stings. It's very temporary. It lasts maybe about 15, maybe 30 seconds, and then it fades. The pain can also be somewhat prevented and lessened in the process. Before I went to Mexico, I had worked up to 12 bee stings a day, and I was really proud of myself. When I was told that that was going to be at least tripled when I got to Mexico, I was very nervous, no doubt, and extremely unprepared. But when I was promised that I was going to feel better in a month, opposed to 2 to 3 years or the 8 years that I've already had Lyme, I just couldn't pass it up because I knew from what little experience that I did have was that it worked. So I couldn't stop that. And then, I mean, in time, it just became relaxing to me, just to be stung. And I do crave it sometimes. Reactions are a part of every treatment. However, when you get reactions from bee stings, it's more of the bee scanning you, telling you what's wrong with you. So if you get, maybe you get a fever after your first treatment, that means you have an infection. If your ears ring, some people's ears ring, it means you have something wrong with your ears. Maybe you get diarrhea, that means you have an intestine problem. So it's just the bees telling you where you need to be stung, really. You don't need to stop, you need to keep going. Also, the American Apitherapy Society says that you need to have an EpiPen with you at all times. In Mexico, they don't even sell them in pharmacies. So this is because less people actually are allergic to bees than they think. In fact, only 1 in 150,000 are actually allergic. Some people think they are allergic because they get symptoms like swelling or hives or something like that. And that's really just the bees scanning you and can be treated with more bees. Another would be like an anxiety attack. You get a lot of adrenaline and you kind of freaked out, you get panicked, your brain thinks it's like you're being attacked, so you have an anxiety attack, maybe your throat closes up a little bit. You just need to calm down. That's not an allergy. You need to calm down. You don't need epinephrine, is my point here. The third example would be if you get stung and you immediately die. Don't get scared because...
Wait a minute, don't get scared if you die?
Don't get scared because the bees can revive you.
Oh my God.
I know it sounds weird, I didn't believe it, but it's true because they are actually more effective than a defibrillator.
Oh.
And it has happened before. Okay. Okay. While it is true that the bee dies after it stings you, bees are prolific breeders. The queen can produce thousands of bees a week. Making honey, especially the commercial ones with the bears and the plastic bottles, the process of making honey actually kills more bees than apitherapy does. Beekeeping independently, of course, adds to the bee population. And when treating, we only use the older bees and when they're almost done with their 45-day life cycle. But what you can do to protect the bees, because it is important, is to not use any pesticides ever. And to buy local raw honey, which is always good. So the question is, how would you like to be stung with 100 bees a day? If you knew it would heal you of something that has been like ruining your life, like it has mine for 8 years, I think I was just extremely desperate in the case being. I didn't know what to do. I was very happy doing it the American way. It was simple, it was easy, and it was making me feel better. But the 100 bees a day, I didn't think I could do it. I did it. I love it. It's great. You can do it too if you want to, really. Only after a few weeks in Mexico, I realized I just didn't have any symptoms anymore. I wasn't getting like my daily headaches. I could actually sleep. I wasn't taking the sleeping pills that I had been taking for 8 years prior. I could stay up like 20-year-olds should, and I didn't have to go to bed at 8 o'clock anymore like I used to, which is definitely life-changing. I know it's unconventional and it's scary, but it's definitely viable and it's super effective, and it's my preferable treatment for not only Lyme, but for all ailments. So thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to go here? You want to go? She's shorter than you.
Hi everyone. My name is Irene Bright-Dumb, and Enid asked me to speak today because I'm a yoga teacher and I'm in a Master's of Science program right now for yoga therapy. And I went into that program very much with the intention of focusing my studies on Lyme disease and how yoga can be a supportive treatment, or supportive kind of adjunct treatment to whatever you're working through or whatever treatment protocol you're following with Lyme disease, but then also with addiction. Because I've found in the Lyme world, it's kind of this niche in healthcare where they really understand that a lot of people, as Enid said earlier, are self-medicating because they're undiagnosed and they're in really severe pain. And when I look around Martha's Vineyard, I see it everywhere. The other thing that really resonates for me with both of those things is the concept of trauma kind of as an underlying way of being in a state of disease, right? So when we have a trauma response, it kind of heightens everything in your nervous system. And depending on any number of factors, be it genetics, environment, whatever the stimulus, whatever the stressor was for the trauma in the first place, your nervous system, and then therefore all the other systems of your body that it controls, which is everything, right, can actually get kind of stuck in that heightened state, which is some of what we see, and feel free to dive in and correct me at any point. That's usually involved in almost any chronic state of illness. So where yoga comes into that is actually in being able to help with a relaxation response, right? So when we're stuck in that kind of heightened state of being, what yoga is really great at, and not necessarily the yoga that you might be getting if you go to really active exercise classes, but more the yoga that's really focused on breath work and quieting and meditation and actually focusing and calming the mind, is really good at shifting you out of that overactive response in all those systems of your body. So a lot of what I've been doing a lot of what I've been finding with my Lyme disease clients is that wherever they're at in a treatment protocol, or wherever they're at in terms of their energy levels or their pain levels, is that yoga really offers us a whole tool set of helping to kind of reprogram that stress response and kind of take it a step back, just as acupuncture helps you calm down the nervous system to be able to sleep better. Yoga similarly gets you out of that activated response, which with acupuncture too, and most complementary practices to integrative medicine, wind up supporting whatever your protocol is even more. because it makes it easier for your body to actually receive it and integrate it. What am I forgetting? I think that's
You've
all.
been doing well.
Yeah. So when I first started looking at all of this stuff, it kind of, the trauma thing went into like a chronic pain thing, and the chronic pain thing went into the addiction and the Lyme disease stuff. And I've been finding more and more that the Lyme disease component is actually very different. It has very similar functions to the chronic pain pieces, but I'm starting to kind of break them off, and I'm actually, I have a vision fellowship through the Martha's Vineyard Vision Fellowship Foundation right now, to be focusing on this stuff, and we're working on a research design program to really actually like pinpoint yoga therapy for Lyme disease specifically, which probably won't be funded for another year or so, but if anyone is interested in getting free private yoga therapy for research purposes, please be in touch.
Sign up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Irene.
Thank you.
Ronnie, you're last. Dr. Ronnie
Hi
Balloon.
guys, I know everyone must be tired, so I'm not going to talk too long, but I'm going to talk a lot, but not too long, okay? I'm going to talk fast. So about Germany, which is so exciting, thank you, Enid, because really she went to Germany to learn a lot about what we should be doing here and what we're not doing here and what works and what doesn't work. For 20 years, I've been doing a lot of things at my retreat and at my clinic in Buffalo for about 15 years. So I'm a traditional naturopathic doctor, a registered nurse, I'm a colon therapist, I'm a detoxification environmental specialist, and I'm a New York Times bestselling author. Now, that's a lot, but mostly what I am, whole body wellness, okay? Dr. Bill came the other day. I don't know how many seen Dr. Bill. It was great. He talked a lot about holistic medicine. He talked a lot about Lyme disease, but keep in mind that Lyme disease is a complex, chronic, devastating illness. The reason why Lyme disease is so hard to treat is because it is whole body. So yeah, bee stings, acupuncture, antibiotics, ozone treatments, glutathione, IV. Am I missing anything? Herbal therapy, essential oils, homeopathy. They all work, guys, they work. But what about after that? And see, that's what the problem is. We fail after that. And the reason why we fail after that treatment is because it is whole body, and now we have to think about what to do with our bodies from that point on. We still have to do what's called detoxification. We have to eat. So I designed a program on what's called the trilogy effect, because I travel all over the country, and I realized that people are saying the same thing no matter where I end up in the country. They're always saying, well, what do I eat? Okay? The other thing that they're always saying is that, what about my pain? So what we found was that most people with chronic Lyme have pain, and they end up on pain medication, so they become addicted to the pain medication. Then we found out that the emotions of these people, they end up, whether they have Lyme brain or not, they all have emotional problems with the Lyme. And they can't concentrate, and they're not really sure if the protocol that they're taking is worth it or not. So they end up having some issues around what to do next. So I had to design something that was really simple, 3 things. That if you had to do something, there's 3 things you have to do. One was detoxification, because you're going to kill, okay? You're going to do the antibiotics, you're going to do the herbal therapy, whatever it is, the bee stings, you're going to do the kill. Everyone's going to do a different kill. But what you do to sustain or maintain your chronic illness is important. And that is that we all have to have what's called a clean body. We have to allow our lymphatic system to cleanse out the cytokines and the toxins that's being released from the kill program. How do you do that? You got to keep it really simple. One of the things that you have to do is you have to make sure that you don't take in food that's going to create inflammation. So there's an anti-inflammatory diet. The anti-inflammatory diet, you got to keep it really simple. You got to do what's called no grains, no sugar, increase your vegetables, increase good quality protein. And you will find if you do that, the pain will decrease because the inflammation has decreased. And also, have you heard of enzyme therapy? Enzyme therapy. What is enzyme therapy? Enzymes is going to allow the body to do what's called maximum absorption and metabolism of the food that you eat. So many people eat food because you have chronic Lyme, you're not processing or you're not digesting your food, so you end up more toxic. So enzyme therapy is important, or juicing. Why do people juice? The reason why people juice, if you take a big plate of food with, 8 vegetables on that plate, if you juice that big plate of food and you come up with 6 ounces to 8 ounces, that's called maximum nutrition in small dosages, because really, the only thing your body wants anyway is the nutrients from the food. The nutrients from the food is what's going to heal the body. So if you practice juicing, mostly greens, it will alkalize the body. Immediately, you will find that the pain level goes way down. Now, there's a whole category of food called inflammatory foods. Nightshades. Anybody heard of nightshades? Yikes. Okay? I like nightshade foods. I love tomatoes. But I don't like what it does. I don't like the fact that I can't process it, or when I go to the bathroom I see it. Okay, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that it increases inflammation in my joints. But a lot of us eat high lecithin foods. So you have to decrease or avoid nightshades. If you have pain, that's a must. The other thing that you have to do is food combined correctly. Because here again, if you have chronic Lyme, your digestive system is not working optimally. If your digestive system is not working optimally, again, you're toxic. So you have the food combined properly. Now, my next book is going to be called Heavy. I had to create something really simple. Heavy means quality proteins for P, E, essential fatty acids. We know now that essential fats decrease inflammation. Okay, so high quality fats, vegetables for V, and Y means your essentials. Your essentials are different from your essentials and your essentials. How do you know what you need from your essentials? Blood tests. Are doctors out there doing nutritional blood testing? Now they are. They've got this great test now called a liquor scan, where you don't even have to puncture. Guys, we live in a really innovative world. Great doctors are doing great things in integrative medicine now, okay? So we have this liquor scan where you don't have to puncture your veins. You could do it by a scan, and it will tell you exactly the metals that are in your body and the minerals that you're deficient in. So literally you need to know what deficiencies you have in your blood. You need to know what excesses. Do you know even if you have high aluminum, anybody with high lead, high mercury? Well, if you don't know, you're not going to get well. You need to know. We're talking about longevity. We're talking about decrease in the chronic illness. So some of these things you really have to do. Now, going back to Germany, which I'm really excited about. I'm all over the place. I told you I would be all over the place because I got to talk really fast. Okay. I love the fact that they're doing detox flushes. Anybody know what magnetic field energy is? Microcirculation. It's really important that you know what microcirculation is, because they've been practicing it with the right machines, right? All these different, I think it's called MRS 2000. Now they got something called the Beamer. Today, Germany works with NASA in Germany. Let's face it, they're like really innovative. They work with NASA and they produce these machines called Beamer, which is called microcirculation. All you have to do is lay on this mat. It has 6 discs within the mat that binds with the blood, the iron in your blood, and it moves the blood across 74,000 miles of vessels. So what we're talking about is unblocking the vessels. Unblocking the vessels so you can have increased oxygen, okay, increased nutrients, and detoxification at the same time. And that's pretty innovative, and that's what I mean by you have to make sure that you're in touch with some of these supportive treatments out there. They're all over the place. So it's not just the antibiotics or the herbs or the essential oils or the bee stings. It's really a maintenance program that we need in order to beat this complex disease called Lyme, chronic Lyme. The other thing that I was really excited about that she was talking about was the blue light therapy and the laser. Did you have laser? They're now doing laser IV therapy. You know, that's another kill program. It's really important. Now, these treatments, guys, don't have a lot of side effects, especially if you are finding that some of the antibiotics that a lot of people are taking, not only are they having a lot of side effects from them, but we're also antibiotic resistant. So they're not even working anymore. So it's important that you make sure that your lifestyle is being supported by a lot of different things, not just one thing. I'm finding that people who do one thing only are having issues with the remissions and the exacerbations. So the other thing that I love is they were doing ozone treatments. I've been doing ozone treatments for 20 years. There's many ways you can do ozone. You look on the internet, you could do IV ozone, you could do ozone body bagging, you could drink ozone water, you could do ozone oil, essential oils. Ozone is a great killer. So we've been doing ozone treatments now. And the other thing is colonics. Colonics is a great supportive treatment. It's one of those treatments that you want to do if you want to have maximum detoxification of your organs. And one more treatment that I really love, and that's called glutathione IV. That's for your liver, okay? Because our liver, our colons, our lymphatic system, and our adrenal glands are the organs that are affected the most with chronic Lyme. You're going to find that most people with chronic Lyme, they're going to be inflamed. You'll see it all over their system. They're going to have a horrible digestive system, and their kidneys and their livers are not working at an optimal level. You can look at their eyes and see they're yellow. You can look at their energy. The other thing that happens, which you really want to get, is IV B vitamin therapy. Why is that important? Adrenals. Your adrenals are being affected, and what we think we're depressed, we think we have anxiety, but if you give yourself a dose of B vitamins, you're going to find that your neurological system's going to work a lot better. So these are some of the supportive treatments that are really important for chronic Lyme, but I've been treating people with cancer for 20 years. I've been doing this work now for 30 years, a 42-year-old, a 32-year-old, and a 21-year-old. And my 21-year-old was coming to me at least once a week with a tick on him. Completely fine. The difference between my 20-year-old and a lot of other 20-year-olds, he has this really strong immune system. It's all about your immune system. And it's never too late. You can increase your immune system today. There are many different herbal remedies that's really good for your immune system. If Dr. Bill had a week, he would have been able to tell you about all of them. But you can also find out about them. All you gotta do is read his book. I have a great website called LymeDetox.com. Go to that website. I try to put new things on the website. Anything that I learn, I just like throw it on the website. So go on that website. And also those great books that Dr. Enid was talking about, they're all good stuff. One thing, many supportive things for chronic Lyme. That's what you have to do. I've been doing it for 20 years with cancer, fibromyalgia, candida syndromes, also with something called chronic fatigue, which is the same. We have all of those same symptoms with chronic Lyme. Supportive treatments is where you want to be. Supportive treatments with the KILL program. Any questions? That was a lot.
Thank you, Lauren. So I just want to share one more thing, and then we're just going to have a quick Q&A. There was something interesting in this book here, the Unlocking Lyme book. The way that you want to find out if you have Lyme disease, it's best if you do a symptom checklist yourself. first. And Dr. Horowitz has one in his first book, which is Why Can't I Get Better? It's the first version. This is his second volume, and the third one's coming out. So there's a symptom checklist in his first book, Why Can't I Get Better?
I think that one's also online, Enid.
Oh, it is?
I think it's on his website, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, it's online? Oh, great. You can go on his website, just look up Richard Horowitz, and he has a symptom checklist. And there's a symptom, not a checklist, but there is a list of symptoms in here that's very good, that he's put together. And I'll just read what he says. Chronic fatigue, migrating arthritis, joint pain, muscle pain, chronic back pain and disc degeneration, chronic flu-like symptoms, headache, neck stiffness and creaking, Bell's palsy, brain fog, decreased cognitive function, noise and sound intolerance, ringing in the ears, disturbed sleep, blurry vision, floaters or eye discomfort, eye pain, tooth pain, dizziness and instability, muscle twitching. We've got burning or tingling, in the feet or the hands, tremor in the head or the hands, chest pain, irregular heartbeat, and shortness of breath, difficulty to capture breath. And what he leaves out is depression and anxiety, which is like, that's why the accident is made that you're sent to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, because this disease causes depression and severe anxiety. And so that's why a mistake can be made there, and you're put on psychotropic drugs, and then nothing's being done about the Lyme, and it's progressing every day, getting worse. This is a progressive disease. And the thing that's interesting is what this doctor, who I like a lot, in the very beginning, he says this very interesting thing. And he says, the status quo is the accepted norm that most everyone follows. While it isn't always correct, it's assumed to be correct, and most people never veer from it for their entire lives. When it happens not to be correct, changing it is like swimming against a stiff current. People typically don't voluntarily choose to swim against the current because it's difficult and sometimes even hazardous. The choice is often made for them by life situations. And so it was made for me, this doctor is saying, and I really, the reason I'm reading this is I relate to this. If I hadn't encountered Lyme disease, I would have probably continued practicing conventional medicine much like my colleagues and not bucking the system and living out a relatively ordinary existence. But like many others affected, however, Lyme disease changed everything about my life. In the beginning, I didn't understand Lyme disease. It took years of struggle for me to comprehend the true nature of the illness and years more to figure out how to overcome it. With time, I came to see the illness very differently than the mainstream view, and Lyme disease is widely accepted as a wolf at the door. In actuality, it's more like a cupboard full of rats. Both can do significant damage, but one is acute, and the other is insidious. So, if anybody has any questions for anybody, I'm going to ask you guys to just pull your chairs up here for a minute, Anise and Ronnie, and we'll just sit up here for a second. If you have any individual questions that you need to have answered, we'll answer them for you now. I also wanted not to forget to tell you that I have a website. It's Lyme Center in Martha's Vineyard, and there's a lot of really good information on there, articles about Lyme. Always remember there are two sides to this story, and you want to stick to the side that believes about chronic Lyme or believes in chronic Lyme, not web information that is saying that it's not true. Okay, so just try to stay away from that because it'll lead you down the wrong path. Okay. Any hands? Any questions? Yeah.
The Vineyard that Ronnie mentioned, is that the same thing as a biomat?
No.
What is it? It's a mat that creates what's called blood flow. It's 6 discs within the mat, and it opens up 74,000 of vessels that we all have, like the size of a thread, really, throughout our entire body. And it's the only device out there. It's a medical class 2 grade device, and it's the only thing out there that will create the type of blood flow.
Does everyone know what a biomat is here? This is a mat that you can buy online, Amazon. It's very good for Lyme disease. It helps with the pain. It helps if you're herxing. It's made in Japan, and it's made of amethyst and
infrared crystals and
it's a far infrared mat. So it does the same thing a far infrared sauna would do, and even if the heat is what's good for, you know, you kind of cook on there.
Yeah.
They have them actually. You can rent at.
Well, I have one at my free clinic too.
You do? Oh, Helly's got one. There you go. She's got one. I have one. I've had one for 10 years. Yeah. So you can go to Helly and use that one. And
Richways.com is the best quality one.
That's right.
It's on Amazon or like.
That's right. You've got to do Ridgeway.
Ridgeways.
Ridgeways is the name.
Like you're rich.
Rich. Okay. Ridgeway. Richways.
That's the best one.
That's the best one. Okay.
If you don't want to invest in a Beamer, they're about
Yeah.
$1,700 for the full
The big one.
body mat.
And there's a half one that's a little cheaper.
Which does the same thing.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Are you doing any resveratrol? Japanese knotweed?
I'm not, but Ronnie, have you been using?
Yeah, we've been using that, but with a combination of other herbs together.
And is that for kill or is that for hurt?
It's for both.
For both?
Yep, depends on how you use it.
Yeah, I'm very curious because I have a ton of it and I didn't know what it was. And I started looking into it and I found the link to it. Peter mentions it.
Yes.
And I'm on a gold line of Japanese knotweed.
Well, there you go.
So
That's a
I
sign
wanna start
from
playing with it.
above or
Okay.
something.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to start playing with it. Do you guys know how to harvest it or
I
have you done
don't.
any concocting or any?
Yeah, no, I just buy
You
it
just
from
buy it.
herbals, and,
Yeah.
but now that I know you have some.
But I've heard many good things about it. Like many people have reported me to me that it works.
That they've tried it?
Yes.
Yeah, I want
Yes.
to find
a
out
lot.
how to figure out how to tincture it and dose it.
Exactly.
Right.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Hi, Ronnie. You saw a lot of very interesting things that I'm keyed on. I'm particularly interested in the heavy metal scanner. That's something fairly new, I guess.
Yes, it is.
Because before it would be like a hair sample.
Right.
Is it as effective as a hair sample?
It's more effective because it's bioavailable as soon as you take the test. The hair sample sometimes can take up, you know, it's in your body for like weeks at a time, and blood is even not as bioavailable as tissue. It's a tissue test from a scan. Yeah.
Is that an expensive thing?
No, actually, I think it's $200-300.
Okay, so if you test for heavy metals, and I think most of us actually have heavy metals, do you just look at the like mercury, aluminum, and then and then what do you do from there?
There's about 9 of them that we look at, and then there's a protocol for it.
So there's like another supplement, or is there?
Some
like
of them are
a
supplements.
detox
There's
thing?
an IV chelation.
Okay.
There's even, we've got EDTA rectal chelation,
Okay.
and there's also an herbal remedy for it, and food. So you get the whole program, food, herbal,
And
and you have
no
choices.
oral chelation
And there's oral chelation, that's the herbal remedies.
and glutathione? Is that
Glutathione per se, but we don't use glutathione with metals by itself. We use the chelation with the glutathione, because the glutathione is just help you to detox your liver.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have you heard if anyone is immune to Lyme?
We don't know. We just don't know
I
that.
think you said earlier that there was like an anti, like a pill that you took or in the past. I remember years and years and years ago at the state forest, I used to take something. that they were testing people.
Right, you're talking about the Lyme vaccine, I believe.
Vaccine is the word I'm thinking.
Yeah, the Lyme vaccine, there's a lot of controversy around this. They came out about 10 years ago, and they took it off the market very quickly. There were 3 shots you were supposed to get, and it was giving people Lyme. And in fact, I've gotten so many calls, I can't even tell you how many, from people who think they got Lyme from the Lyme vaccine.
30 years ago.
Yeah, well,
it may have been an experiment.
It might have been a trial study they were doing at that time. So be careful now. There's a new Lyme vaccine that they're saying is fine, and it's just being released now, and everybody's up in arms about it because they're saying it's the same one, or it's very similar, and that, you know, this is a big fight because there's a lot of money to be made with vaccines. And so the people that own the patent for Lyme-Rex and this new vaccine coming out for Lyme, they stand to make a lot of money. And so that's why it's not very, it's a little bit scary because, you know, we're not sure what's going on here. But the people I told you about who are going to Washington, they are convinced that this whole Lyme thing that's happened politically with this disease is connected with the vaccine. And in some way they explain it. And it's very complicated, but I think it's one theory. But there is something suspicious going on there. So we're not sure. So I'd be a little leery of the vaccine until we find out more and about it, because it's not being trusted very well in the Lyme community.
But also to the question of, is anyone immune? I've spoken with several doctors who, as Ian had said, we don't exactly know, but there are people who, like, you could be on a walk with someone in the woods and they come back covered in ticks and you don't have any.
Right.
And there's a lot of discussion around how epigenetics plays a role in that, and how your health prior to ever being exposed to ticks can play a role in that. So as Ronnie was saying, it's never too late to do something good for your immune system. So, you know, if you can eradicate the Lyme disease, just keep rebuilding your immune system. Just keep rebuilding your microbiome. The healthier you are before you get exposed to ticks, the more likely it is that you won't contract the infection.
And that was Dr. Rawls' whole thing on unlocking Lyme. If you get that book, he really explains that in detail. And he says that your environment, like mold, is like a huge part, you know, of keeping your immune system strong. And we have a lot of mold on this island. So, you know, that makes your immune system very, very weak, so then it's susceptible to disease.
And inflammation that's not related to Lyme can also make you susceptible to Lyme.
That's right.
So to answer your question about immunity, the answer is that they don't really know, but there are people out there that feel that they are immune. I feel that I am. I feel that my whole family is immune. We've certainly been bit by ticks, and I've had bullseye, and I've never had any symptoms.
I just get bitten so much. I mean, I think you said that if you get a bite, you should be on it for 30 days.
Well,
I get bit daily.
Yeah.
I mean, embedded deer ticks. One day I had 8 embedded in my.
Yeah, I mean, it could be immunity. I'm not saying.
No, I don't think I do.
I'm just saying we don't know.
I don't think I do.
You know?
I can't imagine
But,
that I do.
you know, I guess the symptom thing is the key. Like, if you don't have any symptoms, then I guess, you know, you're feeling like you're pretty safe. But what's weird about Lyme is that it can be kicked up, you know, because it can lay dormant in your system. Like my husband, he was bitten at age 13 here on the island because there were summer people. So he had Bell's palsy in his face when he went back to New Jersey for a year, you know, when he was age 13. And his Lyme didn't kick up till years and years later when he had some crises happen.
That's right. It's all
And if you
about
have a
crises.
fall,
Yes.
or, you know,
Right.
sometimes if you have an emotional crisis,
Mhm.
this is what can really, like, trigger this Lyme. And
Right.
this story I've heard many times over and over again. That I had a crisis. I had a financial crisis. I had a divorce. I had, you know, something that happened I felt, you know, a traumatic fall. So I think that weakens the immune system too, or trauma.
Yeah.
And then it opens that door.
Just want to emphasize what you're saying. I was a trip director at a camp back in the 60s and 70s, and I remember taking group out in New Hampshire and knew nothing about ticks. And that summer I had a lot of fatigue, anxiety, depression, and it wasn't from dating either. It could be, but I researched that a lot. I didn't spend a lot of money on it, but anyway, that summer passed, and it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I got slammed. Pressure in my head, severe headaches. If I would just start working, you know, out in the yard, pressure would build up, and pressure would go from my head to my feet.
Yep.
Just very weird.
I've heard that before.
So that was you know, how many years? 30, 40 years?
Yeah.
There were some odd symptoms over a period of time. Lyme was in, the tick bite was in my head. A lot of psychological problems. And needless to say, I'm a psychologist, so that really works well. Patients really can understand me. But that whole piece of the neurobiology there was incredible.
It is, and
Hence we were bitten.
that's true. And that pressure in your head that you're describing, oh my God, after I got bitten by those ticks in my head, I had that every day. And it was like, it feels like your brain is too big for your skull.
Oh, yes.
And you can almost feel your brain hitting your skull. It's a swollen brain.
It's on fire.
I thought about taking a drill one time.
Yeah, I mean, you just feel like you want to relieve the pressure somehow, and you can't. But the one thing that really did remove it was as soon as I got this PICC line, that pressure went away like overnight. That was a crazy thing that happened, and hasn't really come back like that again. No, not like that bad. And I had that daily, like for a few years, you know.
What are you getting for your PICC?
Ceftriaxone. Yeah, and vancomycin is the next one that I'm going to do, I think. I'm going to go without antibiotics for a while now, and just see. And you know, they're asking me not to do antibiotics with St. George Clinic for 2 months. So I'm just going to see, and I haven't crashed or anything. So I'll be very happy to get off of them. Yeah, I don't want to be on these the rest of my life. But you're so torn because you feel like, for some people like me, wow, you know, to have that pressure go away in your head. That's a miraculous feeling. And then to have all my senses come back and all my abilities come back, it's a little bit hard to resist to do the antibiotics when nothing else really worked for me. And I did lots of protocols, many herbal protocols, and you know, it just didn't quite do it for me. Not like that. So it's different for everyone, I think. I think it is.
I have another question. Has anybody in this room done or tried any stem cell therapy, or is there anything local or nearby that's in Boston where they're doing stem cell therapy for that?
Ronnie and I both know about it. Yeah, go ahead, Ronnie.
I have a medical spa in Buffalo, and we're doing stem cell therapy on a couple of Lyme patients up there.
And what form of stem cell therapy?
Embryonic.
Embryonic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's no rejection or anything with that.
Yeah.
So where are you doing that?
It's up in Buffalo, East Amherst. But I'm working with Dr. Tomas, and we both live on the island, even though we work all over the country.
Okay.
So if you're interested, just go to LymeDetox.com, or if you remember my name, my whole name is Dr. Ronnie Clues at Gmail. You can also email me.
Is your name on this LymeDetox.com?
It might be. I haven't been on it, but
So say it again?
yeah, just remember Dr. Ronnie Deleuze. R-O-N-I. Deleuze is D-E-L-U-Z at Gmail.
D-E-L-U-Z.
L-Z as in zebra. Deleuze.
D-E-L-U-Z.
U-Z as in zebra.
That's in zebra,
Yeah.
yeah. At Gmail. And then I will be more than happy to send you some information on stem cell.
Okay.
That's good.
And then I know a little bit about it because I had stem cells in my neck. I think it was 4 years ago at a Lyme clinic in Pocatello, Idaho. It's called the West Clinic. And that took the pain out of my neck for a good 8 months, you know, because I have chronic neck pain. And that really relieved the pain for the first time for about 8 months, and then I got reinfected, you know, and the pain came back. And then my friend, the doctor I told you about, Dr. Heverly, who is the MD that has Lyme, and her daughter as well, they just got stem cell therapy, and they feel better than they have felt in, like they've had Lyme. She's had Lyme for 30 years, and her daughter is 26 and has had Lyme for that long. And they feel like normal for the first time. After, there's 3 shots that you get, you know, the stem cells. It's also embryonic, or I'm sorry, this was an umbilical cord stem cells.
Okay.
Which is supposed to be a little bit better than the embryonic, but they're both good.
Yeah.
Just the animal stem cells and your own stem cells are not supposed to be as good.
Yeah.
But I've heard some good success with your own stem cells at certain places, but the animal stem cells not as potent. But so yeah, you research it. It's around. You can find it. You have to be a little careful where you have it done. You know, I can give you some names of places I know of if you call me, but it's still sort of illegal in this country, so you have to be, and it's illegal in most countries. So people don't talk about it too much, and it's kind of kept under wraps.
Well, you can have it done. There are some places where you can have stem cell therapy done. Like I live in Florida in the wintertime, and you can have it done on the east coast of Florida.
No problem in Florida.
Boynton Beach.
That's right. You can.
I've actually been to a stem cell conference.
Absolutely. It's becoming much more acceptable, and people are talking about it. So it's a lot better, and Ronnie's been having success with it and no trouble. So yeah, I think they're loosening up about it. It used to be real taboo, but now not so much.
And what I've heard too is that, like, if you have young women, like, if they have stem cells taken out and frozen cryogenic, or whatever they call it, if they have them frozen before age 35, and then later on in life you get Parkinson's or Lyme or whatever. I mean, it's not just for Lyme.
I know.
Then they've got their own stem cells that they could actually go back and use. I mean, that's sort of an upcoming.
A lot of people are doing that now. And then the other thing that I just found out, which is very interesting, is when you have a baby, you know how they take the umbilical cord off fast?
Yeah.
Now they're learning that you should leave the umbilical cord attached for a half an hour before you take it out, because all those stem cells from that umbilical cord goes into the child, and then their immune system is much stronger. So now people are asking for that to happen.
Well, if you do it natural, but I had one urgent car, so I had the half an hour thing.
You had it already. That's it. You mean
half an hour to get to the hospital.
So the baby already got like all of the stem cells in there. That's good.
So the advice is delay the visit to the hospital.
That's funny.
Enid, I was at the talk with Dr. Neff that you brought from
Yes.
Grand Rounds.
Yes.
And the information she had was a much different version of how long the tick has to be attached than the hospital says.
Thank you for bringing that up.
And literally, I was at your talk, and she said it's like a few hours now is what they're saying. And literally, a friend had a tick a week later. The doctors that they saw in the ER was in that room in the Grand Rounds.
I know.
And was still saying like 36 to 72 hours.
It's a problem too.
How is that?
Yeah.
going?
Well, see, the reason why Nev said that, I think, and why I back that up totally, is because of what you hear. You know, you hear anecdotal stories, and she's heard hundreds of anecdotal stories over the last 2.5 years that the Dean Lyme Center has been open. And I've heard so many stories too. And from that knowledge, I have to say that I've had people, many people, say to me that they have symptoms right away, you know, after they've been bitten. And so, you know, to give that information is not so good, because then people think, oh, well, I don't have to worry about that, you know, because that wasn't attached that long. And so, but we don't know enough about chronic Lyme or Lyme disease itself, I think, you know, to make that decision. So I think that Nev is just being, you know, please be cautious. You know, just we don't know enough about this disease yet to make any kind of decision like that. And I think that it's a little problem because the CDC has put these guidelines out. and then people are believing this information. And you know, we don't know why they've been doing this, but it's misinformation.
Yeah.
I think it is. You know, about the testing and about the tick time that it's attached. And
Well, it's really disheartening to know that we're in one of the main epicenters of the epidemic, and our own hospital is.
Yeah.
It's a problem, you know,
yeah,
there's no doubt about it. It's slowly starting to get a little bit better after Nev talked, I think, but, you know, it's still, you know, sometimes if you get stuck in a groove, you know, it's hard to get unstuck. And I'm hoping that gets a little bit better, you know, especially with using the blood test. That one bothers me. And because then you're told you don't have Lyme when you really do, and this is a progressive disease. And so you walk away thinking you're fine, you know, and the same thing with the 2-pill doxy, you know, because you think you'll be safe with that when you get bitten. And I think, I mean, Nev said that won't do anything. You know, that 2 pills is like nothing. You know? So, yeah.
I had shingles back in April, and my partner here came up with a cure of vitamin C, which worked. And is there any connection to using vitamin C and Lyme disease? I mean, this vitamin C seems to be unusually powerful, and the shingles problems were not unlike some of the things you're describing.
Ronnie knows that.
Well, we've been using high doses of vitamin C for years for just many chronic illnesses, starting with cancer. Over the last 30 years, we've been using high-dose vitamin C all the way up to 50 grams. So yes, it is wonderful for autoimmune and for immune and for Lyme disease and for shingles, many autoimmune and chronic illnesses. It responds very well to vitamin C with lysine and B vitamins.
Yeah, I took 10 grams a day for about at least a week, and
that's great.
Worked.
That's great.
Any kind of vitamin seems to really help your immune system, and intravenous vitamins especially. You know, I got a lot of those in Germany where I had something going in my arm pretty much all day long and night. And, you know, it was either glutathione or vitamin therapy or, you know, I don't know what all they put in my arm. I have a list. But it was a lot. But it made me feel better. I know that much. And I think it was just replenishing my system that had been so depleted from the antibiotics. And the antibiotics will deplete and destroy your system. You know, and you cannot be on these things forever. But
it's an immune system depletion, so that's why you always have to make sure you keep your immune system healthy when you're on antibiotics with high dosages of minerals and vitamins. And hopefully some probiotics they were given at the clinic as well.
Can I ask another question? What minerals do you find people are most deficient in?
Believe it or not, which is very sad, people don't realize that, but they're low in magnesium and potassium.
Yeah.
And that's deadly. Yeah, deadly, Yes. Yeah, because, you know, we live in a world of plentifulness, but we're very deficient. And the more we do blood tests, the more we find some of these things out. But a lot of it has to do with our food supply not having it, but also we have a very poor detoxification phases, and we don't absorb it. And then we still have another whole community of people who exercise and sweat, and they just don't put in adequate replacement. So there's a lot of reasons for that.
Plus the soil.
Plus the soil
is deficient.
Exactly.
so we have to stop, but if you want to take a minute and just get any phone number you need here, if you need to talk to anybody on the panel, thank you all for coming, and have a good rest of the summer.